Hello, everyone. Thank you once again for joining me on our LinkedIn Live kind of lunch chat that we've started here at Lead by Design Lab. So glad to see you. Grateful that you would take 15 minutes out your lunch to spend some time with me and to continue to build and grow as leaders. So I'm going to jump right in because we only have 15 minutes and I want to make sure that I create space for any questions that you all may have. So I'm going to jump into today's topic. Okay. So the way we, just so you have some little back end knowledge, the way we get our topics is through our community, through you all. Through your DMs or answers to polls, we learn what you all might be interested in learning about and growing yourselves as leaders. And so today's topic, as you know, is all about giving feedback to your team. And in order to do that in a very succinct way, I decided to offer you a framework that I use with clients on how to give effective feedback to your team. And then after I give you kind of the do's of it through this framework, I'm gonna give you a few don'ts of things that I know will just kind of make the feedback less palatable if you go this other route. So let's first jump into the do's and then we'll spend some time on the don'ts. But as you can see, if you do have any questions, go ahead and start populating the chat. And then I'll make sure to try to get through as many of them as I can. All right, so let's get right into it. So the framework that I decided to offer you all that I have found to be really effective in giving feedback is a framework called SBI. That is an amazing framework. As you can see on the screen, the SBI stands for Situation, Behavior, and Impact. And basically, this is kind of a model that you would use to have a conversation with someone to provide that feedback. Okay. So, what I'm going to do is kind of walk you through each of the letters and also offer kind of a story spine that'll help you to see how you use it. So, let's start with the S. So, the S stands for situation. So, think of it as setting the scene of the feedback. What I mean by that is it's important to provide context to what you're about to give feedback on because often the person is coming to your conversation, your feedback, not knowing what the heck you want to talk about or where is this coming from? What happened? When did it happen? So the S provides a moment in time of a scene that you are about to use relative to this feedback. So, for example, if the S for me was, hey, last week we had our weekly team meeting on Zoom, right? That's the scene. That's what I'm about to talk to you about. The Zoom meeting we had last week. Okay. Then I'm going to move over to the next letter, B. The B stands for behavior. So this is where you really want to describe the observed behavior that you saw that you're about to give feedback on. This is really an important thing and often what gets a little kind of messy because we don't talk about the observed behavior in feedback. We talk about the inferred behavior, right? We talk about what we think they were doing. That's going to be one of the don'ts. The do is I'm going to just tell you what I saw, right? And so if I use the same story spine last week during our team meeting on Zoom, I observed that while I was giving the monthly goal metrics to the team, you were interjecting your thoughts and comments as I was speaking. That is the observed behavior. The not observed behavior, the assumptions or the inferences would be you were trying to get some shine or you were trying to, step on my toes or da-da-da. See, that's going to send you down a very thorny path. Live right in this pocket of observed behavior. What did you see? Right? So after that, then you want to move into the I. The I is about what was the impact that behavior had on me, not on others. My feedback is about me. I'm giving you feedback about my experience relative to last week's meeting on Zoom when I was giving the weekly metric goals for the team. I observed that you were interjecting your thoughts as I was trying to share the objectives. And the impact that that had on me was that I really felt disregarded and unheard as I was trying to share with the team. Whoa, that is a now, if y'all are being honest, y'all know that that is a very rare the way feedback normally goes down, right? It's normally a whole lot of you and you said and you did and da 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 da. When you use SBI, you are living in such a clear, objective way of sharing feedback that no one can refute your observed behavior, the behavior you observed. They can't refute your feelings, how it made you feel. But if you start doing the whole, yeah, and you did, and you were trying to, they can be like, no, I wasn't. What are you talking about? So if you live in SBI, then it is a very effective way of getting your experience, your feelings across to the other person. Once you do these 3 steps in the conversation, I want you to just take a pause, catch a breath, take a beat, and be quiet to allow the other person to take in the information. This is likely unexpected and new to them. So instead of continuing to talk because you're probably a little awkward and nervous about how did that feedback land, just stop talking and allow the person to absorb what you shared with them. When you've done that, maybe even count in your head to 5 if you need that because you're anxious, which is likely the case. After you do that, you can say, do you have any questions? They might be in their feelings and say, no. Okay. We can check back in next week if you want during our one-on-one and speak more. But I just wanted to share that feedback with you and so that we can work toward, mitigating that in the future. This is not the time, unless asked, to tell them how you want it to be done differently. In this moment, when you're first giving that feedback, you just want to give them space to take it all in, right? This is not the time to give them advice unless they ask. If they say, well, gosh, I was so excited about the goals that you were offering that I just, I'm speaking. Is there a better way to do that? Okay, now they've opened the door. Now walk in. Or you could say, you know what? I'm so glad you asked. I do have some ideas, but I really want to just take a moment to just allow this to kind of sink in. And during our meeting next week, let's talk about solutions on how that could be done differently. Because sometimes, and this is just like from my experience, sometimes going into that dyadic conversation right now, it may not go as well as allowing everybody to walk away and come back to the table and talk about it. Because now they've had time to process, you've had time to maybe think of some answers to questions or advice that you might want to offer versus trying to do it in the moment. So I would recommend that you just kind of go back to your corners and add that to the agenda for the next time you all meet. Okay. If you don't have a meeting scheduled with a person, say, hey, let's put 15 minutes on the calendar for next Monday where we can check back in and we can talk about solutioning so that type of experience doesn't happen again. So that would be my suggestion for a very clean way to move through an effective feedback conversation. Okay, it's super important that you hold dear that you want to stay specific in a scene. You want to talk only about observed behaviors, not inferences. And then you want to live in the I statements, not the you statements. Okay. Now, before I open the floor up to questions, I do want to get a few don'ts. And I've kind of like snuck some of them in as we were talking, but let me just make them very explicit, some don'ts. The first don't I would say is do not be vague. This is not the time to be, hey, I noticed that you interrupt me in meetings. What? When? When did I do that? Here we go, back down that thorny path where they're going to be able to refute that, right? So don't be vague. Go on, get right into it. When did they do that? Be specific. The other thing I would say is don't make assumptions. And you heard me talk about this before, but don't assume what you believe that observed behavior meant. Because excuse me, you don't know what they meant by the behavior. You just know the behavior. So my experience has been it's easier to live in the objective here's what I saw versus here's what I think that behavior meant. Again, it's not going to serve you well to try to assume what someone meant in their behavior. So don't live there. The third don't that I have found to be super helpful is do not live in extreme words. You never. Now, y'all know goodness well that can be easily refuted. How often is always true? How often is never true? So you always interrupt me in meetings will not serve you as a leader. Instead, hey, last week you did it, right? That's a better way to get to some effective feedback. And also, let me just say parenthetically, it also allows people to be in that moment in time, right? Versus trying to think of all the times that they may have ever interrupted you. That's too much for anyone to hold in their mind. So let them live right in that moment in time. And then the last thing I would say is do not let this be a time when you just pile it on, you heap it on. You're like, oh, and then while I'm at it, you also did this. And then another thing. This is not an another thing moment. Again, live in this moment in time because that is what you're trying to get your point across and to kind of correct that experience and that behavior so it doesn't happen again. And from that experience, not all of the things that could have happened since they started working there. This is not the time to do that. Now, if it is a performance review or whatever, where you're going to give feedback over the course of the year, cool. But then do SBI for each thing that you want to give feedback on. So, right. So it's not like, oh, and then by the way, da da da. No, do that clean framework for each thing you want to give feedback on. Okay. So I hope that's helpful. I hope you see kind of the merits of this SBI framework and you can add it to your toolkit. I'm telling you, I use it both personally and professionally. So people in my personal space have gotten SBI approaches when I offer feedback there as well. And I'm telling you, it works. It's effective. It allows you to take some of the guessing out of how to have these conversations, and it allows it to be grounded in a moment in time. The other little sweet spot is it allows you as a leader to be vulnerable and to allow your team member to see you be vulnerable. That impact statement, the impact it had on me was that I felt disregarded. Whoa. Talk about opening up the door for someone to see you as a human that has feelings as a leader, and also creating this space of like, wow, I'm sharing a vulnerable moment with you, and I'm joining what's likely a vulnerable moment that you're having as I'm giving you this feedback. So that also creates a little bit of a magic moment that will build out some psychological safety on your team. So I hope that's helpful. I'm going to open the floor for any questions in our last 2 minutes. And then I'm gonna let y'all go ahead and have some time back to enjoy your lunch, your break, eyes away from the camera, if that is your choosing. So any questions that folks have, go ahead and populate it in the chat. And while I wait for questions, one thing that often comes up to people ask me, particularly in coaching sessions, is when is the best time to give feedback? And I will tell you, as close to the experience as possible. Don't let months go by and then you're trying to harken back to, remember on January 12th when we had that meeting? No, because guess what? They're not going to remember it. So that means that they can't get in that moment to know what they should change. So I would say as close to the moment in time as you can, provide that feedback to the person. So that's one that I often get in coaching sessions. Any other questions for folks? Oh, awesome. Well, as we wrap, what I would say is if you are someone who really struggles with giving feedback and you want to go a little bit deeper than the 15 minutes I am doing right now, just to get you all in and out with this set of tools, feel free to connect with me. I would love to talk and help figure out what you might be struggling with and how other tools could be added to help you to have even more effective feedback conversations with your team. So with that, I will say thank you so much for taking time out. I don't take it lightly that you took some time out of your day to come in and hang out with me. So thank you for joining, and look for news about our next topic that'll be coming out in April, where we will share another 15 minutes to add even more tools to your toolkits as leaders. Thanks again for joining, you all. Take care.